Finally! I've been waiting for this to finish for ages, and boy have I been doing some thinking in the meantime. The biters. There's something fishy going on there if you ask me. A whole planet covered in them, the ability to become supercharged by simple pollution, and yet they always seem to lose. Today we shall embark on an epic adventure to find the answer to the question, why do the biters always lose? In order to find the answers we seek, we must analyse the tactics and physiology of the biters. Only once we've fully explored these facets of the biters' existence will we know why they always lose in the end. Also, this video is meant to be in general and in the long run, so I don't want to hear about your tragic death world experiences. This stuff still applies, just bear with me. Anyway, let's start looking into tactics. Firstly, the biter attack. Let's take a look at the typical biter attack on a well-defended base. We can see that they slowly make their way from their nests towards our base. During this time, they're outside the range of our defenses, and our defenses are outside the range of their attacks. This is where they make their first mistake, a crippling lack of ancient Chinese wisdom. Sun Tzu said, "Whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field and has to hasten the battle will arrive exhausted." Perhaps if the biters could pick up a copy of The Art of War, they'd be better at this. Just before they enter range, they begin to charge full speed directly at the wall. A truly valiant effort if it wasn't for the uranium gun turrets, laser turrets, and flamethrowers perched on the other side of the wall. Unsurprisingly, the biters are quickly mowed down by my defenses with little to no damage sustained. In fact, in this attack, not a single biter managed to get any sort of attack off. There are two pieces of information that this gives us. Firstly, my base defenses are quite good and very possibly overpowered, and secondly, the biters' attack strategy is awful. The keen-eyed amongst you will look at this suicide run and draw similarities to waves of soldiers going over the top in trench warfare. For the few who are unaware, trench warfare is a type of warfare wherein combatants occupy trenches, mainly to shelter themselves from gunfire and artillery. While not the only example of trench warfare throughout history, it has become popularly associated with World War I due to repeated outflanking maneuvers resulting in a trench front stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland's border with France. This type of warfare dominated the Western Front due to a number of factors, the main being an imbalance in the technology at the time, meaning that firepower outweighed mobility. This leads to a situation wherein it is easy to defend your position but hard to attack the enemies. The result of this is trench warfare. While this isn't exactly applicable to the deadlock we face with the biters, I hope you can see some similarities emerging. The firepower of our base vastly outweighs the ability of the biters to soak up the damage, meaning that they are often unable to mount a significant attack. Taking the comparison to trench warfare even deeper, we can look at the similarities between the biters' apparent tactics and those of Douglas Haig, Commander-in-Chief of the British forces for the majority of the First World War. Throughout the war, Haig was seeking an opportunity to break through the enemy lines defended by trenches, theoretically making the Western Front similar to the Eastern. Towards the start of the war, the tactic was to bombard your enemy with artillery fire for sometimes days at a time before sending waves of soldiers out of the trenches and into no man's land, the area between the two trench lines, in an attempt to take the enemy's trench. I think you can guess how this went most of the time. Yeah, it wasn't an overly effective strategy. Haig had 2 million British casualties under his command, earning him the nickname Butcher Haig, which seems fair. Okay, back to Factorio now. We can clearly see that the biter strategy for removing us from their planet is very bad. While you certainly didn't need the quick history lesson to determine that, as I would argue anyone with half a brain would figure it out pretty quickly, it does help to establish a historical basis to analyse what the biters could be doing, if anything at all. The biters don't seem to have access to any kind of artillery, unless of course you count the worms, which I don't since their range is awful and mobility not existent, so that's off the table. A change of tactics likely wouldn't work since this is a question of who can damage who more, and unfortunately for the biters, I have a robot network that can repair my defenses. It's somewhat beside the point though, since the biters seem to have exactly one strategy and an inability to develop a second. While they didn't get much of a chance to shine during World War I, tanks were incredibly effective against trenches, when they weren't plagued by technical issues due to being a very recent development or stuck in an anti-tank trench, that is. Tanks, due to having superior firepower to a human and considerably more armor than one, nullify basically all of the defenses of a trench, besides of course those pesky ditches. While Factorio does feature tanks, personally I don't find them all that useful and think that the Spidertron is a much more useful equivalent because it has more firepower, more capacity for armor, and can easily walk over walls. Good thing the biters don't have anything like that. Hey, what's that? Okay, I feel safer now. Where was I? Oh, yeah, tanks. Currently, the biters don't have access to such technology, meaning that there is nothing they can do to free themselves from this nightmare. Or is there? There's more to the story here, my friend. We just need to look a little deeper to find it. Let's have a look at what happens when you emerge from the confines of your base to clear out some biters manually. Don't worry, I don't have a real-world military tangent prepared for you this time. We're just going to look at it factually. If you want to achieve success in extra-base biter combat, you're probably going to want to bring some significant armament. Last season's equipment isn't going to help you here, and if you get too overconfident, it can result in death. Sun Tzu said that the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself, so perhaps the biters know more than I gave them credit for. Getting back to combat, this means that you need to keep developing new technology and expanding the factory to keep up with the development of the biters. Intelligent game decision, or something more insidious? We shall soon find out. Finally, let's look at the physiology of the biters themselves. The biters start off as small, brown creatures, peacefully keeping to themselves. However, after our arrival on their planet and subsequent industrial revolution, they become larger, stronger, more aggressive, and genetic variants such as acid spitters start to appear. We know that this is due to them absorbing the pollution from our wonderful factory, and we assume that their attacks are because, to quote the achievements in the game, it stinks and they don't like it. I was content to accept this for a while. It made sense to me that the pollution-driven extreme evolution experienced by the biters was simply a metaphor for the environmental impacts of pollution in our world. However, if you care to look beneath the surface, you'll find a rather disturbing anomaly. We can see how far a pollution cloud extends, right? Well, then it stands to reason that if an area has no pollution cloud marked on it, then there would never have been any pollution spread there. No pollution there would surely mean no evolved biters there, right? Well, using some highly advanced technology, I looked into sectors never before explored and, more importantly, never before polluted. And what did I see? A biter nest as evolved as the ones with a constant feed. I know I've never seen two biter nests interact with each other. Nests expand, not merge. Even if they did merge for some kind of breeding, wouldn't it stand to reason that the biters from further away from the pollution would be more desirable mates than the evolved ones? Remember, it stinks and they don't like it. I'd also like to note that the biters are entirely peaceful with one another, even the ones corrupted by pollution. So it's not some kind of grand expansion of the stronger, polluted biters. Biters only attack you, the player. The factory builder. Think my initial experiment was conducted far too close to the pollution cloud? Let's take a trip up the Northern Railway then. This is an unnecessarily long railway going directly north, several times beyond the greatest extent of the pollution cloud. Repeat the experiment up here and what do we find? The exact same result. Fully evolved biters, far beyond the reach of the pollution cloud. This didn't make sense to me for a while. Why would biters all the way out here be evolved just the same as those who absorb the pollution before it gets any further out? Then it came to me. Ancient Chinese wisdom so simple I'm surprised it took me so long to realize. Sun Tzu said, all warfare is based on deception. Clearly, the biters are better versed in ancient Chinese military writings than I ever gave them credit for. With this final piece of the puzzle, the entire conspiracy became clear to me. The extent of the biters' deception revealed. Put on your tinfoil hats, folks, and prepare to have your eyes opened. Picture this, if you will. The biters' world prior to our arrival. The creatures of the world live in harmony with both each other and nature. Then, suddenly, our ship crashes. All of our crew bar ourselves perish in the crash. The biters see the fireball falling from the sky, but they aren't concerned with it, as evident from the fact that the biters leave you alone at the start of the game. You begin mining, smelting, and building a factory. This of course emits pollution, which in the beginning is localized to your starting area. However, as time goes on, the cloud becomes larger and it begins to creep outwards towards the biters. Eventually, unbeknownst to you, the first biter gets a taste of the pollution. The effect is immediate. The rush of power, the strength. It's a high like no other. It's addictive. Transformative. That's right, folks. The biters don't hate the pollution, they love it. Initially, there is conflict within biter society. What do they do about this highly addictive steroid cloud that just arrived? They correctly conclude that it originates from the crash site they saw only recently. Certain hardline groups against the use of the pollution drug decide to take matters into their own hands and resolve to destroy your factory no matter the cost. They have to free their people. Thus begins the first biter attack. You successfully fend them off, of course, since the unevolved biters don't have chance against your defense. You, in response, continue to develop your defenses to deal with the new biter threat. With the disappearance of the attack group and elimination of the anti-pollution flank, the biter society is content to leave you be so that you keep producing the pollution that they are now hopelessly addicted to. They export it to places that your pollution cloud would never have reached on its own, explaining the identical levels of evolution in distant lands. The problem is, demand outweighs supply. Since you haven't seen a biter attack in a while, you've become complacent. There is no sense of urgency to expand the factory. The biters realized that pollution production surged after the first attack, but growth stagnated shortly after. They resolved to attack again, to make sure you keep expanding. However, this attack is different to the last. Last time, the biters wanted to destroy your factory. This time, the biters only want you to think it. They don't actually want to destroy it. They want you to expand, but you can't know that. If you knew, that could jeopardize their access to the drug that they're dependent on. So they keep sending attack parties destined for death. It isn't hard to find participants. An opportunity to get an even stronger hit of the drug is every addict's dream. You keep getting attacked, you keep expanding the factory, you keep polluting, they keep taking. But what about when you leave the base, you might ask? Well, the biters, for all their advanced knowledge, don't completely think straight when it comes to things that might interfere with their supply. If you're outside the factory, you're not expanding, you're not polluting. The biters have to force you back in. The only way you'll defeat them is with the most advanced technology available, which no doubt pollutes immensely to produce. It all fits together. The biters have been playing us from the start. You think you're addicted to expanding the factory? So are they, just in a different way. Remember the thumbnail for the video? The fools aren't the biters, they never have been. It's us, we're the fools. We play directly into their hand, facilitating the drug addiction of an entire species. Though the biter case may be closed, some questions still remain unanswered. For example, what's going on with the fish? I'll get back to you when I figure that one out. But in the meantime, I'm going to get back to expanding the factory. The biters need their fix.